Dan Hurley is not the Los Angeles Lakers head coach. Where do the purple and gold go next? Plus, what do the Mavs need to do better to keep up in this series? And who is the early leader for NBA Finals MVP? We'll get to it all today on Locked On NBA. Let's go.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Tuesday, and welcome into another edition of Locked On NBA, where we break down the latest and greatest from around the association, including today, news on the updates on the head coaching front in LA, the finals, which are trudging on as the Mavs try to get things back at home, and much more. Usually you get Matt Moore. Today, you get me. I'm Tony East. I host Locked On Pacers. He's David Ramil. He's here every Tuesday and is one of the hosts of Locked On Heat. And David, the big non-finals news of the day, Dan Hurley made his decision. He's not the Lakers coach. He's staying at UConn, chasing the third title in a row. The Lakers coaching search goes elsewhere. Plus, we'll get to finals talk on the Mavs and what Dallas needs to do better and who the current leader is for finals MVP. I have a hot take, according to the masses, but we must start in La La Land because, surprise, I thought he was going to take the job given the momentum. Dan Hurley, not the Lakers coach. Were you surprised also? And what do you feel like the Lakers do now? Because it sounds like he was their top candidate and they didn't get him.
I was a little in the middle in terms of my surprise level, because I think that the prevailing thought, and it kind of seems much more likely now that it's played out the way that it has, was that Hurley was using the Lakers for some sort of leverage, and that the idea was that he really just wanted to stay with UConn in the first place. There's a connection with Adrian Wojnarowski that goes back to his father, who Woj wrote a book about, etc. There's, the conflicting reports that came out, I think, virtually in the same day, right, between Shams of The Athletic saying, oh, JJ Redick, it's his job to lose, and then hours later, Wojnarowski saying the Lakers are zeroing in on Dan Hurley as their top candidate. And then we kind of get more and more increasing buzz that Hurley's their guy. They're preparing this total package. And then we kind of hear the final amounts. And they weren't really that kind of the amount of money that you think would be necessary to lure a coach out of UConn in order to join the NBA ranks. So, I mean, it was a fair amount of money, but I didn't think it was a kind of overwhelming money that might be needed in order to cement that deal. You want to lock in your guy. It's a challenging situation in Los Angeles, certainly. I don't think it's an ideal coaching spot. I mean, it's one of 30 jobs, sure, but there's certainly going to be a fair amount of challenges. Darvin Ham may have been a little bit, well, he might not have been ready for the head coaching gig, but I think, there was the challenge of dealing with LeBron James, of dealing with an older roster, of dealing with a roster that wasn't necessarily put well together. And that might not be particularly attractive for Dan Hurley. So I totally get why he didn't go and take the Lakers job. As far as what happens next, it's lackluster, right? I don't know how you go back and be like, oh, that was just all overblown. That was the newsmakers doing what they do and reporting on this and kind of smelling blood in the water. But you were our guy all along. It had nothing to do with Dan Hurley. So I don't know. I mean, they'll take the job, whether it's James Borrego or JJ Redick. Either one of those will take the job, obviously, because, again, it's 1 in 30, and you've got to take the opportunity when they present themselves. And you're probably going to be out on your ass in a couple years anyway, not really be able to fulfill that contract. But guess what? You're going to get paid. So that's the beauty of NBA head coaching jobs, is that you get to collect that money anyway. So it's a good opportunity for anybody who wants it.
It's very fascinating. The wrinkle that I think is a little interesting specifically is that James Borrego is reportedly a Cavs candidate too. And so the only two openings are still competing, and like maybe JJ Redick is the Lakers guy in the end, who knows? But that's why I think the timing's kind of interesting, is just there's decisions to be made there. And then Donovan Mitchell, that all these dominoes have to fall before free agency can start. And this just makes it all the more interesting how those dominoes will overlap at some point. I'm surprised to hear you say that offer was low. I was shocked how high it was. Like, don't get me wrong, you're going to have to pay a lot to lure a guy out of UConn, but the reporting is that UConn's offer is less per year. Don't get me wrong. It's a different, less stressful job, but it's less per year. And for guys like college coaches who've come to the NBA, you just never know, right? Brad Stevens is obviously what everyone will point to as the rosy, like, this could go awesome, diagram, because it did go awesome for the Celtics. But John Beilein very recently did not go awesome for the Cavs. So, like, you just never know. So and you don't get an offer publicized unless that's your guy, right? You don't make a 5-year offer, and maybe they did lowball him and say, this is our line and that's how much we want you. But to me, you don't make that offer and it doesn't get out unless that was their leading candidate. So whether Hurley was doing this for leverage reasons to get an up his offer from UConn, because it sounds like he already had one kind of outstanding, but maybe to get it upped, or whether he just wanted to hear him out and see what it would take for him to literally move coasts and have the exact opposite job that he has now on the coaching front, and how different that kind of would be. I don't know. But in terms of what it shakes out now to is they went from JJ Redick and James Borrego as the reported top 2 candidates to having to go back to that. And look, these are adults who understand business, and you said it. There's only 30 jobs, and so awkward is the wrong word. It's not, these aren't kids. It's not awkward, but there is some level of like emotional dynamic now to having to go back and say, hey, this is what we know that got reported at least, but to go back and say, hey, that guy that we offered the job to already, we wanted you all along. Like that doesn't hit the strings right, but maybe someone who wants the job still gets it. So I'll be very curious how that opens up the next stage of this coaching search and what the Lakers want, because if they really wanted someone like Hurley to both coach well now and be, as was reported, kind of a development guy for whoever their young next core ended up being, as was kind of alluded to along the way, what do Redick and Borrego or whoever else could be in the mix rank on that front? Because Kenny Atkinson, reportedly a candidate in Cleveland, seems to check all those boxes to me, but you hardly hear him connected to LA. So I'll be very curious where this goes for the Lakers. I'm glad Dan Hurley could make a decision early so that this got to die very fast and not be a drug out thing during the finals that JJ Redick is calling. And now we'll see where it goes. I'm endlessly fascinated by the human emotion dynamics now.
How do you think, or where do you rank the candidates that are best? Because I tend to think that Redick is probably still a little, maybe not ready for the job. It's just, there's going to be some unique challenges there that I don't know that he's prepared for. And I think he's kind of, given his overall intelligence, understanding the game, relationships with the players and everything else like that, those are certainly factors in his favor that he can understand from a former player's perspective, et cetera, that, either Borrego nor Hurley can present. But at the same time, like, does he possess the level of acumen necessarily to get the most out of that roster and kind of work together with the different egos in play here, et cetera? Because it sounds like Redick is probably 1A of the candidates that are remaining, at least for the Lakers' perspective, or based on the reporting about it. So, like, where do you see the rest of the kind of candidates fall in line? Do you think Atkinson deserves more of a shot? Do you think that Borrego? I haven't seen anything from Borrego that really stands out, either his tenure with the Spurs or as an assistant, or I think he was an assistant in Orlando as well, or interim head coach is what he was in Orlando, and then he was with Charlotte for a while. But I don't know that there was anything. Like, everybody says the same thing. He's a hard worker, dedicated, etc. But you are what you are based on your record and everything else. And he didn't really do anything of note in Charlotte. So it kind of feels like they're settling a little bit. Like, they put all their chips into the Hurley basket, and it was like, yeah, not so fast. I didn't really want the job that much in the first place. And now you're kind of stuck looking at the other candidates and going, well, they clearly have weaknesses in their own way, but we got to pick somebody, because we can't just have LeBron as a player coach.
Makes me laugh when stuff like that gets reported. Oh, they love how prepared JJ Redick is. Did they do a bad job hiring an unprepared coach last time? Are they admitting that right now? Like, it's just very strange how the spin comes on those. Look, you just don't know what to make of a JJ Redick as a coach, because he hasn't. And that's not to say he wouldn't be good at it. Lots of players, like, there's literally a coach in the NBA Finals right now who went from player to coaching, but was probably, per his own admission, not very good at first, right? Like, didn't go great with the Nets, went a little better, but not great with the Bucks. And then he finally hit his stride here in Dallas and is getting contract extensions, right? So there are former players who have worked as coaches, and there are a lot who haven't. The reason it stands out is, like, you look at the list of the reported interviews they've had: David Adelman, James Borrego, Sam Cassell, Micah Nori, Chris Quinn, and JJ Redick, all top assistants somewhere on respected teams, and JJ Redick, right? So it's just a striking thing, and you don't know how the assistant thing's going to go either. Maybe you get Jamal Mosley, maybe you get Nate Bjorkgren. So it's really hard. It's hard to know, right? That's why these interviews are so interesting, and why you have to get the guy in your building to know. And that's what makes analyzing coaching hires so hard. But I just have a lot of trouble saying any sort of real take about what JJ Redick could be as a coach, because I have no idea. I've never met him.
Sure.
I've never seen him coach, and he's never done it. But if they get him in the building and he says the right things and he values the things they value, then he's the right coach for them, right? That's as simple as it is in the hiring process. It just stands out so much in that way, and it is a unique job. So maybe a unique hire is the way to go.
Well put. Shall we wrap it up? And I mean, there's nothing else to really say about it. I mean, it's going to play out one way. Maybe there's a surprise candidate that we haven't seen, but at this point, I think the reporting is all fairly in depth. I'm not sure how much of a surprise there could possibly be at this point. So we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, stealing some thunder. Of course, the Lakers doing what they do. They steal a little thunder from the Boston Celtics while they're in the finals. But we'll be talking about the Celtics just fine in the next segment when we look at what the Mavs can do, because they just have not had any answers for the Boston Celtics. Down 2-0. We'll address what Dallas has to do in the next segment here on Locked On NBA. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, the NHL Finals not getting any love, Florida Panthers, go Cats, and more. And you can bet on it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the Finals MVP. We'll be talking about who you should be betting on next to who's going to hit one out of the park. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We'll be right back.
Back here on Locked On NBA. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen should be Locked On Lakers. For more about what we just talked about from their local perspective in LA, the Kamenetsky brothers will tell you what to make of Dan Hurley not being the Lakers coach and what happens next in LA. I'll be very curious. This is such a fascinating, just the layers to this to me. Or check out Locked On Cavs, because they are also in the midst of a coaching search, and they will not be stealing the thunder of the finals because they're the Cleveland Cavaliers, but still a very interesting job and a very interesting team this summer. Let's talk about the finals, because it's the finals, and that's the most important thing in the NBA. The Mavs are playing the Celtics, and the Celtics are winning both games so far, and they look very good, and they've had star players not have awesome games and still had the margin for error to win because they're so loaded, which has been a fascinating thing. And the Mavs have a glaring thing that I would like to start with as we get here, but they need to win at home. Likely, actually, almost certainly both. We've seen teams come back from 3-1 as the underdog before, not that long ago, but it's extremely hard. And so they need to get better. They need to do it right now. They need to do it on both ends. And if I'm going to talk about what the Mavs need to do better, it all starts with the guy that everybody said, if he's the second or third best player in the series, the Mavs will have a chance to win. He has not been the second or third best player in the series. He probably hasn't even been fourth or fifth. And that's Kyrie Irving, who really struggled in Boston, currently shooting 35% from the field. He has made 0 threes. I was going to try to say that in a cute way, but that's a disaster. He's got to make shots and be better there. The assist numbers are down. His assist to turnover ratio is not very good. And the thing that stood out, and this is, not something I usually say about Kyrie, but I said it on Locked On NBA after they beat the Timberwolves. He was defending pretty well in the first 3 rounds of the Western Conference playoffs. Even that has faded away a little bit. We can get into a little more nuanced things and likely will about what the Mavs need to do better in this series. But if they want a chance to keep up, Kyrie Irving has to be much better these next 5, however many games.
That's pretty clear. I just don't know that he can. I think, can he? Do you think that Boston's going to all of a sudden ease off and be like, oh, you know what? He's going to let's not defend him. Let's not, run multiple defenders at him. I think. Let me
tell you the conflicting thoughts I just had as you lobbed me that question. So my lifelong take on Kyrie Irving is his best NBA skill, and this is a compliment that won't sound like it, is being LeBron's teammate. He was very good at it, and that is a very hard thing to do. But a lot of those skills apply to playing with Luka, and he was very good in the finals that his team won. So when you said, can he? If I'm just talking about, can Kyrie Irving play good? Yeah, I've seen him play good in the finals before in his life, but this Celtics defense is a lot better than that Warriors defense was, which does change how hard it is for him to actually play at a Kyrie Irving level. So I have conflicting answers to the question you just asked me.
No, I mean, we saw him play really well against a Minnesota's defense that was, between Conley and Anthony Edwards, very good also, but not necessarily focused on doing the things that Boston does very well that takes Kyrie out of his game and makes him less effective. Like, he's had open shots, but he's so out of rhythm at this point after having to fight through past Drew Holiday, past Derek White, past Brown and Tatum, etc. Like, there aren't a lot of easy opportunities for him, and those shots just haven't fallen. It's not like he's hurt either, so there's no excuse. Like, even with Luka, like, as good as he was in game 2, like, you know that there's something in the back there where, like, he's clearly been hurt. He hasn't been playing at 100%, and he's still dominant. So that's, all the more credit to him, despite Boston's incredible defense. Although I think they're a lot more allowing Luka to do what he does best and kind of shutting down everything else. And they've kind of taken away a lot of those easy looks. And I don't know that Kyrie can get it going at this point. Like, maybe he'll start to feel a little home cooking. Maybe the shots will fall in game 3 and he kind of becomes re-energized. Not a knock on him. It's just, he hasn't been good enough. And I think a big part of that is not on him. It's mostly been due to Boston's really much better defense.
Yeah, their defense has stumped everybody, right? Like,
sure.
And so you can't necessarily just put that on him. But what you see is what you just said. And even Luka's 6 turnovers a game, right? In this final so far, they've done a pretty good job with him. But like, all the stuff that made the Mavs feel so like a machine in these first 3 rounds, the PJ Washington hit every 3, the Derek Jones cutting into space, look, Gafford or Lively just slipped wide open to the rim for a lob, are happening. Those things are happening way less. Right. And like, to some point, I understand that in the finals is going to happen a little less. This is the most locked in you'll be to a game plan. But if that stuff's cut off, your star has to be very good. And he hasn't. So the top of my list of Dallas has to see this happen or they can't win is Kyrie. But that lob game is also there. What to you would rank high on this list?
I think trying to flip the script a little bit defensively, because they were so good defensively against the Timberwolves, and they looked like a team that just was really capable of upsetting Boston. Like, I think a lot of people saw Boston's path, and we've been debating this on the show, and Dallas had somewhat of an easy path as well, but I mean, they played defense at such a high level, and they had been for the second half of the season after the All-Star break and after the acquisition of PJ Washington, etc. They just look like a much better team. They have not. They've looked very discombobulated. They just have been very effective. In a way, they've been targeting Tatum to a certain degree, although I think Tatum's got his own woes, which, again, we'll talk about in the next segment. But they kind of have to, I think, flip the script a little bit, kind of let him go and then deny those passes that he's making to everybody else so that they can keep the guys like Derek White and Drew Holiday from going out. Because right now that has not been the case. While Tatum might not be scoring so effectively, he's still making plays for others. He still demands so much attention from that Dallas defense. He's making it easier for everybody else to score at a high level, which is why you've had the production that you've had across the board from everybody but Tatum. So I wonder whether or not Dallas can kind of flip the script a little bit defensively, kind of let Tatum get his while denying those passes to other Celtics players and kind of mitigate what they've been able to do offensively.
You got to try to cut off the rim against Boston. And to be clear, every team has tried. It's not easy to do, but that's where it starts, because when they're really clicked and focused on the drives, they're just such a buzzsaw.
Who did you have favored in the series? We never got a chance to talk
but I picked him in 6, and I feel like it might be shorter than that now.
Yeah, Matt made a good point last week. It says, basically, given Luka and his ability to kind of live for those moments, that the longer the series goes on, the more likely Dallas might have an opportunity to kind of pull off the upset here, if you look at it that way. That if Boston had a better chance of closing out the series early, that was their best chance to do so. And it's kind of playing out to fruition. So kudos to him for calling it.
Something else minor that is again very small, but you can't play Luka Kyrie for 48. So you have to play a third guard. But they've kind of been not guessing, but just searching for whatever and those backup guard spots. Tim Hardaway Jr. in game 1, Dante Exum and Jaden Hardy in game 2. Hardy played both games, I think. But these guys are playing like 6 or 7 minutes. Like, just cut that out. Just pick one backup guard. If it's me, I'm picking Tim Hardaway Jr., although I get why they might not do that. And that's it. It's the finals. Like, you have to live with that. And maybe Luka's injury means they can't. But they've played a lot of guys that I'm like, don't think you can play that guy in the finals. You just can't. So a small rotational tweak from J Kidd might be needed.
Why Hardaway? Why, in your opinion, why do you think he's the best fit?
Well, the ideal version of Tim Hardaway is the best fit. The guy he usually is not the case. But if he's locked into not shooting 10 times, perhaps because
he wouldn't be Tim Hardaway then.
You are right about that. Mostly the answer is size, because there's no one small who ever plays for Boston, and he's the biggest of those guys. Maybe you pick Exum because he can defend and has a little size, and Josh Green's going to play, right? He can be wingy or guardy, so maybe you just don't even bother. But you got to cut one guy, I think. I think they're playing too many.
Well, we talked about the Mavs side of things. Do you want to wrap this up and let's move on to some discussion about Finals MVP? Because Boston has clearly been dominant. So we'll talk about who's got the edge in that race in our next segment here on Locked On NBA. Before we talk about that, today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Look, you probably got something you want to get off your chest. I know a lot of people who do, but you know what? You can't really find that family member or that coworker that you're comfortable with, because you know what? They might be a little biased on their perspective. You want to talk to somebody who's got a clear perspective, an unbiased view of whatever may be affecting you, whether it's been some kind of long-term trauma or just an issue that you just want to talk your way through. And if that's the case, you're probably thinking of starting therapy. And if so, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire. It takes no more than a couple of minutes. You get matched up with a licensed therapist right away. And if for whatever reason you need to switch therapists, maybe there's a change in your schedule, maybe you just don't necessarily see eye to eye with the person that you're seeing, there's no additional charge and it takes no time at all. Really convenient. Again, it's all suited to make things easier for you. So get it off your chest. Visit BetterHelp now. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today, and you get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back.
Back here once again on Locked On NBA. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Locked On Celtics should be your second listen if you want to hear about the local perspective on the winning finals team. David makes a face because the Celtics beat the Heat in the postseason. They also beat the Pacers.
I don't remember.
Or the Dallas Mavericks. Have they ever played the Heat in the playoffs? That could be your second listen, Locked On Mavs, with Nick Angstad, although the Heat also beat the Mavericks in the playoffs very famously too. So whatever side you can live on there. Let's talk about Boston specific. This is going to be Boston heavy because they're up 2-0, but the finals MVP discussions have been very interesting to me. No uniform answer at all, and my answer has been exceedingly unpopular. And Luka's even sneaking in because he's playing extremely well, even though the Mavs are down 0-2. Although I am team no loser should ever win finals MVP, even though you can play the best. If your team doesn't win, it's just a default to the other team. If you had to pick right now through 2 games, David Ramil, who is your finals MVP pick?
Not easy. Kind of waffling between Drew Holiday and Jaylen Brown. I think those are more likely choices. I think there's a case to be made for Jason Tatum. I think there's a case to be made for Luka Doncic. Like, why can't it be the player on a losing team? Like, didn't they do enough? Like, what's more is required of them? Like, I mean, like maybe there's
what more is required? A victory in a basketball game,
but they don't control that single-handedly. Like, okay. Again, maybe this is going to be a homerish response, and I'm sure Celtics fans are already gearing up their keyboards to leave some kind of spicy comment about me. But you go back to the 2020 NBA Finals, Miami versus the Los Angeles Lakers. As good as Anthony Davis was, as good as LeBron James was, who was the best individual player in that NBA Finals run? I think it's the guy who wears 22 in Miami. At least that's my perspective. And I think given the historic numbers that he put up in the finals, couldn't he have gotten a few votes going his way, other than the fact that he carried the team to 2 wins? Wasn't that enough? So I don't know. That's just I feel like we shouldn't get caught up in how these awards, like the letter, the spirit of the award is, you got to award the best winner, the best player on a winning team. It's like, it's finals MVP, the most valuable player.
So anyway, over the 82-game regular season, that's the take I also have. In the very short 7-game finals, where it's the playoffs and like the series winner means so much, I do change my stance a little bit, just because it's fair enough. And I agree with you that Butler was the best player, and I think as of right now, history would look back and say Luka was the best in these finals. But actually, the only way I'll accept that they should give it to the loser is if the Celtics are celebrating the championship and Luka has to walk out and hold up the Finals MVP trophy in the middle of the Celtics team on the floor. Then I would be all for it because that would be awesome.
Okay. So knowing that Doncic has no chance, I guess you got to give it to Holiday at this point. It might seem a little premature. Like, what was your pick?
Right with you, did it?
No, I don't know. Like, I mean, you can make a case like Porzingis had a great game 1, and then Holiday had a great game 2. Brown's been pretty consistently good. Tatum, again, I mean, like my co-host at Locked On, he said that Tatum is somehow going to wind up escaping with the award because he'll have just enough of a good offensive game where you can look at he's averaging nearly a triple-double given his rebounds and assists and everything else and all the other things he's doing, that he's shooting horribly from the floor. We can kind of overlook that because he's making an impact in every other way. So there's a case to be made for a number of Celtics players up to this point, assuming the series plays out the way the first 2 games have. Who's your pick?
Well, allow me to give Wes some boost of ego here, because I don't even think he needs a great offensive game. Just do like 45% shooting nights, because Tatum's my pick right now. Tatum's done. Look, don't get me wrong. He's 12 for 38 from the field. Obviously, that stinks, right? That's really bad. And this was a gripe I had in game 2 that didn't matter because they won anyway, but he clearly had a few moments. Like, he had the steal where he went for the dunk and could not dunk from the angle he took off from. And, he had a missed 3 earlier in the clock. They needed to shoot in the last couple of minutes, where he was going for a kill shot, like a moment shot. And like, it's fine. They were up 10-ish at the time, but just play right for 1 more minute and you win. It's just some of those things that bug you. But outside of being 12 for 38, good on the glass, and that matters because he pushes a lot for them, because it doesn't matter who has it. They have a lot of guys who can push. His passing has been exceptionally good for them. Like, he's actually, when he's attacking the basket, making those right reads quite a bit. Defensively, he's been extremely good on a very good defensive team. He's played very well outside of being very bad at finishing plays. And so I have him and Drew Holiday very close, because Drew's done a lot of stuff extremely well, shooting well, passing well, hitting the glass hard extremely well every game, and guarding either Kyrie or Luka a lot of the time. So maybe he does deserve the tilt for just the role he plays and how difficult it is. Yeah. But Tatum draws so much attention on the defensive end and is still, again, outside of the very important thing of putting the ball in the basket, has been very good at everything else. I think I lean Tatum right now, but Drew Holiday could, with one more exceptional game, be the front runner very easily to me.
Fair enough. You don't think there's a case to be made? Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You don't think there's a case to be made there? Like, I mean, offensively, certainly the more impactful player leading the Celtics. I mean, to your point, he might be the best player, if not the necessarily most impactful player. That's not the spirit of the word, maybe.
Well, let's call Jason Kidd and ask him who the best player is.
Okay. I don't know if this was addressed on our previous show. Now, was this just gamemanship on his part? Is he trying to create some division in the Celtics ranks? Is that how he wholeheartedly believes? And you have Holiday saying he's not wrong. I don't think he's lying, et cetera, or whatever the exact quote was.
Go ahead.
No. Do you think that there's some validity to it? Is Brown Boston's best player at this point in time?
Well, I only would say I think it's gamesmanship because you also have been in lots of press conferences, David. How often has a coach ever just outright said, yeah, that's the best player on the other team? Like, ever?
No. They always give credit. It's not just one guy. I mean, especially Spoelstra. Yeah, he's like a master at that. That's right. He gives credit to the assistant trainer more than he gives to any one player. He doesn't want any bulletin board material.
Well coached team, hell of a group. Yeah. They play the right way. They never
give them credit. Give them credit. They do things the right way. That's a really good team over there. You could have won by 30, and they're deflecting all the praise whatsoever. So yeah,
he's got a hard job over there, and he's doing a great job. So the oned time Rick Carlisle's ever done it, ironically, for this series, they lost to the Bucks 2 years ago in a regular season game. Drew Holiday at 51, and he said, "I'd like you guys to name 5 better NBA players than Drew Holiday." I was like,
"Wow,
that's a big break." It's so rare though. Like, I can think of the one moment it's happened in like the last half decade. So yeah, I think it was gamesmanship, and immediately the Celtics were like, yeah, no. And you know how I know it's not getting to them? Not because they're both shooting well. They're both passing very well, right? They're not trying to be very heroic or like prove anything. And they've shot it poorly, but that's good. Moving the ball well is what you need to do in these cases. And they've passed it better than the Mavs, which surprises me a little bit, even though the Mavs do have the best self-creator in the league. So fascinating series, but interesting differing opinions. Yeah, Brown could have just like a 45-point game and take this over, right? Like he is the most potential for that part of this.
Do you give any credence to the idea that Boston hasn't played particularly well and still they're up 2-0? Because I think that's kind of taking some. They have not, in some respects they have not shot well, etc. But they certainly played well enough to dominate, and certainly defensively. And I think that's kind of overstated. Like the people, I don't know if it's just kind of hedging their bets a little bit. The idea is like, oh, Dallas can find a way to come back. Like I've watched the first 2 games. I don't know. I was kind of waffling on my prediction. I thought Dallas might have a chance based on what they did in the previous series, but looking at the first 2 games now, it does not look like there's a clear path. And certainly there's a lot of games ahead, and maybe they can change things. If they win both games in Dallas, clearly there's a chance, with Luka and everything that he possesses. But I don't know. It just does not seem like that. And I'm prepared to eat crow heartily if that's the case. But right now, Boston just looks like a much better team.
I mean, truly team comparison statistically, a lot of stats are really similar through 2 games. There's 2 that aren't. One is 3-point percentage. The Celtics are shooting 8% better from deep. And I'm being vague about that because they're shooting bad still. The Celtics would be like, damn, we suck from 3. What'd they start in game 2? 1 for 11, I think it was. And Derek White hit 1. They were really slow starting from deep in that game. But they're 8% ahead because the Mavs have been worse than 1 for 4 from deep, right? Like that. So on some hands, the Celtics could say, man, we're up 2-0. We played like crap. And the Mavs could go, you've played like crap. We've played, And the other stat is free throw shooting, a very similar story where the Celtics would say, dang, we're not doing great from the line. And the Mavs are shooting 17% worse. So I think both teams feel like they have a much higher gear to hit, but they got to hit. You can say that all you want, but there is at most 5 games left in the NBA season. Like you don't have time to say that you have a gear to hit. You have to hit it now. So the Mavs, I think, are playing worse than their expected level compared to Boston to me, but Boston's a better team. So they're up 2-0.
All right. I think that does it for today's episode.
Tomorrow, you will get your usual Tuesday cast. Well, maybe. I don't know what John's doing. John Corrales and Jake Madison. Usually John might be traveling for, the NBA finals. So we'll see. But every day here on Locked On NBA, you can get the local experts on the most recent stories. Game 3 of this series is Wednesday. So expect more chatter on it tomorrow and maybe more on the Lakers coaching search if more comes out on this Hurley stuff. David is on X or Twitter at Ramil13, and you can find him on Locked On Heat. I'm on there at Tony R. East, and you can find me over at Locked On Pacers, where you can hear about 2 powerhouse East teams, conference finalists against the Celtics in the last 2 years on their local feed. Back tomorrow talking more NBA. Thanks, y'all, for listening. See ya very soon.